Hello everyone, welcome to the third episode of the Mahabharat Chronicles. Fate whispered to the warrior, "You cannot withstand the storm." The warrior whispered back, "I am the storm." Pretty powerful, isn't it? Perfectly suits the hero of today's story. In the last episode, we spoke about how Devavrat got to know that his father was distressed because of Satyavati. Devavrat spoke to Satyavati's father and asked him the reason why he declined his father's proposal. He knew it was highly unlikely that a lowly fisher king could have gotten a better son-in-law than Shantanu. "I did not decline your father's proposal. I just kept a condition." "What condition?" "I asked him to commit that it will be my daughter's children who shall inherit the throne of Hastinapur." Devavrat instantly understood why his father did not accept his condition. As per the convention that time, the eldest son was the successor, and since he was Shantanu's eldest son, it was his right. He was already the crown prince. So it was anyway not Shantanu's place to give that commitment. Even in context of Dwapar Yug, this was a very big ask. It was a choice between giving away your inheritance versus your father's happiness. For any ordinary person, this would have been impossible to agree. But Devavrat was different. He was beyond mortal desires. For him, it was an easy choice. He just smiled and asked, "Is that all?" "Don't worry about it. You have my word. Satyavati's son will inherit the throne, and I shall never claim the throne." However, her father wanted more. "I trust you, Devavrat. But what about your children? What if they fight with my grandson? Then who will protect him?" Devavrat smiled. He understood the real meaning of his ask. The Fisher King was not only asking the inheritance, he was asking both security and loyalty from Devavrat for his grandchildren. To us, it might seem unreasonable, and we can also question that since both Devavrat and Shantanu were powerful warriors, they could have just defeated the Fisher King and won Satyavati. This was also pretty normal for those days. But this also brings us to two interesting insights. One, it seems people in those days were pretty progressive about women's rights. So the woman's consent for marriage was sacrosanct, even if you won a woman in a battle. And second, the Fisher King was most likely only a front. It was actually Satyavati who wanted this commitment as a condition for her consent to marry Shantanu. So, before we talk about what Devavrat replied, let me take you a bit backwards in time. Let us talk about who was Devavrat, who was his mother, and why she left. Answers to these will help you understand why Devavrat chose what he did. Nothing about Devavrat was ordinary. He was son of river Ganga. Yes, the same river Ganga which we know as the sacred river. It is a belief that its water washes away bad karma. You know, when we see seas, rivers, mountains, we often get mesmerized by their beauty. We find them picturesque. But River Ganga is different. Seeing River Ganga is like witnessing divinity. It's a spiritual experience. If you ever get a chance in life, see it for yourself. It is only river in the world whose water never goes bad. And it is not just a belief, it's scientifically tested. You can just fill a bottle and keep it at your home for years. Amazing, isn't it? So Ganga was originally a celestial river. She descended to earth after years and years of intense prayer by a king named Bhagirath. This is why River Ganga is also known as Bhagirathi. Story of River Ganga's descent to earth is a beautiful story of grit of a person and how his perseverance moved even gods. And God Shiva himself came down to earth to help him. But that story is for later. So back to Shantanu. Once Shantanu saw Ganga in her human form and he fell in love with her. He proposed marriage to her and Ganga agreed. But she asked a promise that Shantanu would never question her any actions. If you ever asked any questions, I would leave you. Shantanu was so smitten by her, so he agreed without paying much thought. So you see, Shantanu had some history of obsessive love. Shantanu and Ganga married and lived happily ever after until they had their first son. Shantanu was very happy, but his happiness was short lived. Just after the birth, Ganga drowned the baby in a river. He was horrified. He wanted to stop her, but then he remembered his promise. He didn't want to lose Ganga, so he kept quiet. But it continued. Eventually, he lost 7 sons like that. When they had their 8th son, he felt he had enough. He could not stop himself and confronted Ganga. He asked her why she was being so heartless as a mother, and he pleaded with her to spare his son's life. You have broken your promise. I will have to leave you. Ganga was sad and she shared the reason for her dreadful actions. Their sons were actually celestial beings cursed to be born as mortals. Ganga had freed them from living a condemned life. But since Shantanu stopped her, she could not free the 8th son. This 8th son was named Devavrat. Ganga left Shantanu and took Devavrat with her. She had to prepare him for the challenging life ahead. She promised Shantanu that Devavrat would return to him after a few years. Ganga kept her promise. Shantanu was very happy as Devavrat was a perfect son. He was highly learned and a skilled warrior. You know, in life there are only a few occasions where you face a decision point so important that it would radically change the future course of your life. It was one such moment for Devavrat. But he did not flinch. He was a warrior, so backing out was not an option for him. Then he said something after which there was not a shred of doubt left with the Fisher King. He proclaimed, I, Devavrat, son of King Shantanu, swear that I shall forever remain celibate and always be loyal and devoted to the throne of Hastinapur and to the one occupying it. Without any fear, doubt, or regret, Devavrat committed his whole life. Such unyielding determination without any selfish interest was beyond extraordinary. His words echoed in space. The earth stopped for a moment. The heavens shook. The skies roared with lightning. No one had ever taken such oath that broke all mortal conventions. As the weight of his words sunk in, gods in heaven began showering flowers on him in admiration. They named him Bhishma. Bhishma means someone who took an extremely difficult challenge. Devrat was the only selfless character in entire Mahabharata, who in a way lived the philosophy of karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana in its purest of the form. He became like a epitome of selflessness. I mean, performing duty without any expectations sounds pretty amazing, but almost impossible to practice. Think about it and maybe try making a list of meaningful things you did in life without any expectations. Are you finding hard to remember? We all do. Can you imagine in a fraction of a second his world changed? From being the would-be king, he became just the caretaker of the throne of Hastinapur. Sadly, in all his goodness and sacrifice, he did not know that because of his oath, he had set the ball rolling for the deadliest war in the history of mankind. End of episode.